Right now, it's time to welcome our first guest of the afternoon to the Fight Day set. He is quickly becoming one of the most popular fighters in the UFC, while simultaneously developing quite the reputation for knocking out other top middleweights. Here to discuss his latest win at UFC 130 and what's next for him in the middleweight division is UFC star All-American Brian Stann. How are you, man?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. This is an exciting time to be Brian Stann.
It is. It's been really great. And, me more so just because of my skill sets and my ability now to fight the big fights and live the dream. When you're a fighter in the UFC, you don't want to just exist here. You want to be able to fight the best, and you want to have the skill set and the performance that dictate your ability to do so. So I'm just really pleased with that, and I'm glad the UFC's been giving me the tough matchups.
Greg Jackson is well known as one of the best coaches in mixed martial arts. You decided to go there. As a natural leader yourself, why did you choose Greg Jackson as the guy to train you over everyone else?
Well, actually, I met him when the UFC was in Atlanta, and that was right after I lost my title to Steve Cantwell, and he actually asked me, he said, Brian, I think there's a lot of areas that I can help you, and I'd love for you to come down to the gym. So I went down there for a week and tried it out, and after the first week, Jardine and Villasenor came up to me, put their hand on my shoulder and said, hey, man, you really belong here. And I felt like I belonged there. And there's just an environment where you don't just have one or two coaches. It's not just Greg Jackson and Mike Winklejohn. Every fighter that trains there is another coach for you. So every time I would get beat or if I got caught by a move, whoever I was training with would stop and tell me what I was doing wrong. And that's what allowed me to progress from basically being a raw guy who could throw punches to an actual mixed martial artist in 3 years.
On a scale of 1 to 100, how would you grade yourself then, and how would you grade yourself now as a mixed martial artist?
Oh, then I'd probably grade me at about 35, and then now I'd say about 75.
People are talking about Brian Stann really being in the hunt for the title at this point. How do you look at that situation and break it down? Do you think that you're ready for a title now, or do you got a couple of more fights?
Well, I think I have a couple more fights regardless of what I think. And, I have no issues fighting anybody in the middleweight division right now. To turn down a title fight is just ridiculous at this level.
Right.
Everybody has a shot to win, and especially when the champion's a guy like Anderson Silva who does like to stand and bang, etc., then you're always going to have a puncher's chance. But for me, I know I'm going to have to fight 1 or 2 times before I get that shot at the title. And I'm going to have to fight, 2 or maybe even 3 really good guys. So that's what I'm focused on right now.
It's an interesting situation because tonight we've got Wanderlei Silva fighting Chris Lieben. And one of the fights that Wanderlei Silva was being talked about, at least in the realm, was fighting you. And he didn't want that fight because he understands how popular you are. It's All-American Brian Stann. But now, because you just went out there and knocked out Chris Lieben, you have guys calling you out because they understand what it can do for their career. How do you feel about being called out by other middleweights?
I don't mind it. I think that's what they should do. And I don't think it's an insult. I think you as a fighter need to take control of your career. And there's times after your fight where you need to evaluate the landscape. You need to see who's out there and who's not matched up yet. And you always want to be fighting up. And that's what I did with the Chris Lieben fight. That's what I did when I asked for Wanderlei Silva. And that's where I got lucky when they didn't know who they were going to match me up with. And I got George Santiago. Lieben and Santiago both at the time were well above me in the rankings. And that's what you want as a fighter. If you're fighting up, you have more to gain and less to lose.
So you asked for Wanderlei Silva?
Yes.
Were you surprised that he declined the fight?
No, absolutely not. Wanderlei Silva is a legend. And he is at that point where he can fight whoever he wants. And I think when you get to a point in your career where you've fought 30 to 40 fights, you've won multiple world titles, you're really looking for matchups that really excite you. And I think at the end of the day, the matchup with a guy like Chris Lieben just excited him more than a matchup against me. And he has earned that right, and he's earned that status. And whether it had to do with anybody booing him or not, I'm not sure. But at the same time, in addition to the matchup that excited him, I think his injury timeline, he wasn't so sure. He didn't know if he could be ready for Memorial Day weekend, which is when I really wanted to fight. It was something personal to me. And he didn't want to say yes, and then all of a sudden he had to push it back to July because he didn't know if his knee was going to be ready.
Everyone knows that you're a decorated war hero, and you mentioned Memorial Day weekend was very personal to you. With you being a war hero and representing the military in many ways, do you find that that's something that you want to go in there and really put on an extra show for the people that you are fighting for on Memorial Day weekend, as an example?
It has nothing to do. I don't consider myself a hero. I was simply a Marine who was doing his job. But, when you're a service person and you go out and you go to combat and you go through extreme things, it's no different than if someone were to get in a car accident or have a major catastrophe in anything in life. That experience and those traumatic experiences stay with you forever, and they become part of what defines you. So for me, having gone through those experiences with men and women who were so amazing, and having some of them having losing some of them in combat, etc., that's going to define part of who you are as a human being. And I always promised myself if I was going to continue to do this, I was going to leverage the notoriety I got from fighting to bestow it upon the men and women who are my personal heroes, who are the men and women who serve. So really that's really the ideology behind it. It's not something where I'm trying to promote myself or make money off my military background. It's just a simple fact of, you know, when you serve in that kind of environment and you go through extreme experiences, it becomes part of who you are. And for me in fighting, those are the guys that I want to represent.
All right, Megan O'Leary has been here in Las Vegas all week, and she actually has a question right now in the Boost Mobile fan sound off.
Hey guys, I'm here at the UFC 132 weigh-ins, and I found some Marines. I'm here with Corporal Martinez, who has a question for you, Brian. What's your question?
Hey Stan, what are your thoughts on fighting Anderson Silva?
And when are you going to go visit them? They want to know when you're coming to San Diego.
When are you coming to San Diego?
What are your thoughts, Brian?
Well, first and foremost, I'll go to San Diego anytime I'm allowed. I love that city. It's amazing, and it's obviously a huge Marine town. I fought there last August and just had a great experience. But what are my thoughts on fighting Anderson Silva? Is a dream come true. Anybody who doesn't want to fight the champion is really in the wrong sport. So, you know, if I were to get the opportunity to be lucky enough to fight the champion Anderson Silva in the UFC, I think it would be a very difficult matchup. It's a matchup where I would really have to improve my footwork. I have to show him a couple different looks in the stand-up game. He's not the type of guy who's going to come and try and take me down. He will try and strike with me, and he has some of the fastest hands I've ever seen in the sport. And I think he's got the best hand-eye coordination out of any fighter we've ever seen in mixed martial arts. So lots of head movement. I'd have to fight him lefty and righty. I'd have to threaten the takedown on him and really mix things up so that he just can't get used to me and implement, you know, his game plan.
We saw that impressive front kick that he did to Vitor Belfort at UFC 126. Do you think that your more impressive chin could withstand it?
You know, I'll tell you what, if someone kicks me like that, the chances of their foot breaking are much higher than my head getting hurt. Obviously, it's not just my jaw, it's the whole, I'm in the Tito Ortiz category.
Brian, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for your service to our country as we celebrate this 4th of July weekend as well. We'll see you soon, my friend.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, guys.